we should do a special covering the Vanilla Ice movie. We should just watch it and do like a reaction.
I reckon we should all get together, podcast night out, watch the Vanilla Ice. Hang on, what is the Vanilla Ice movie? I didn't know there was one coming out.
No, it's not coming out. It was out in like 92.
Oh, right.
Much like Purple Rain or 8 Mile, you've also got Vanilla Ice's like semi-autobiographical story.
I bet it's amazing.
It sounds right.
It's an experience, I'm sure.
It's not something I'm in a rush to watch.
No, I'm not.
No rush.
I'm going to go and grab some wine while we're waiting for Alex.
Yeah, go for it, man. Hello, Funketeers! It's that time once again. If you hear any noise, it's just me and the boys, back once again with the next episode of the Cacophony Sessions. My name is Dan Whitell, and yes, I did consider writing a rap intro, but decided against it, you'll be glad to hear. Tonight, we're covering early 1990s hip-hop, as was decreed by Martyn at the end of the last one, following his winning pick from 1987. And stepping up to the mic this month are my real motherfucking G's. Jim?
My milk is green. Come drink me.
It's like something out of a fucking horror movie.
Al?
Are you a bank? Because you have my interest.
Oh, no. Martyn?
Hi, I'm Martyn, and I'm the real Martyn Lay. All the other imitators can please stand up. Please. Oh,
That's not even early 90s.
That wasn't even close to it either. That was rubbish.
This is going to be a bad
That
one.
was so rubbish it's got to stay
Aim
in.
for effort.
There's no second chances. And Tom.
Hi, I'm Tom, and this is the most you're going to hear me say all night.
That wasn't a David Mitchell quote.
No,
No, it wasn't. I got bored
It
of
made more
those.
sense.
Yeah, it did. We are on literally the topic that means the least to me of all of the musical topics we could possibly have come up with. I know more about Gregorian chant and Baroque-era opera than I do about 90s hip-hop.
And I'm so glad you didn't win.
Can we do a Gregorian chants episode?
In an alternate universe, there is a version of this podcast where we're now sitting around going, well, I've got shit all to say about Gregorian chants.
If I get to pick, I'm going to pick Gregorian chants.
No,
definitely.
I am
Definitely.
vetoing. Now, we're not going to profess to be experts on early 90s hip-hop. Martyn was the only one who was actually around at the time.
Hang on, we were all alive.
In 1990, most of us were about 2 or 3, though, whereas Martyn was 42.
In my living memory, I can only remember Tupac being dead.
Hey, Tupac's not dead, man. Treat this as an idiot's guide to early hip-hop. So if you are coming to this from a perspective of having indulged in these records at the time and knowing a lot about the best MCs, best producers, best albums from the period, then don't let us feel like we're patronising you. But there may be something worthwhile for everyone. We've all been listening to our favourites. We've all got our picks. We're going to break it down in terms of having our favourite albums discussed, our favourite producers of the period and of the era, our favourite MCs as well. These are by no means the best, but they're our personal favourites. But we've got things to get through before we get there. As always, it's time for tangents. The very first of them being the ever-popular Does It Slap? Who wants to be our contestant on Does It Slap this evening?
Don't you hate a podcast where the jingles are crap? So let's take a good song and ask, does it slap?
Can Gangsta's Paradise be put on it?
Ooh.
no.
I mean, everyone likes that song, right? I was on
Yeah.
YouTube just looking at 90s hip-hop and just random videos on a mix, and I was like, that was a good song. Everyone knows that slaps.
It is a good song.
Everyone knows that slaps.
It does.
Given Coolio's died since the last
Yeah.
episode,
Yeah.
it seems like a pretty apt
Yeah.
memorial to the great man.
I want to know why
Yeah.
Martyn disagrees, because it is a very good song.
I don't like the song, but as James said, like, the guy died recently, so I don't know. I think, like, let's just give it to him because, like, you know, fuck me, man.
Yeah, he'll
that
appreciate
song,
it, won't he?
Yeah, he would appreciate it. He'd like it. He would look down on us and go, "You boys, you know your hip hop guys, you know." And Coolio actually had one of my favourite songs of the 90s called it sampled Fantastic Damage. I can't remember what
Fantastic
the song-
Voyage.
Yeah, Fantastic Voyage. That's
and
the
it was
one.
called Fantastic Voyage from '94.
Yeah, and I think that's fucking amazing.
It's
so
incredible.
yeah, I'm going to give you that only for that reason.
I think that Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise is one of the most quotable rap songs ever because everybody knows all the words to it. It's one of those where it comes on and you know, whether you know all of it or whether you know just bits and pieces. I would say most people on the planet have about 3 or 4 lines from that song that when it comes on, they can just repeat ad verbatim.
Yep.
And that's why I think it's an undeniable banger.
If we're just adding songs that I think are good, and everyone else seems to agree, we can just put Cypress Hill and Sane in the Brain on it as well.
I mean, that's also an undeniable banger.
I mean, I've yet to meet someone who dislikes that song.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck off, Martin. It was look. You're wrong.
I mean, best hip hop album of the 90s is Outside This Window, and it's got to be the Fugees, right? So we've got to put, like, Ready or Not's got to...
If we're just stretching it out to hip-hop bangers, I'm putting In the Club by 50 Cent as an undeniable banger too.
Hell fucking no.
Oh, come on. It's got big dick energy all over it. It's just fantastic.
I think we need a rule where, like, to be an undeniable banger, it has to be at least 5 years old, so we haven't got recency bias.
Alex, I hate to break this to you, but In the Club came out like
17 years ago, I think.
Oh no, I missed what he said, and I just came in on big dick energy.
Oh, no, I'm not. I mean, I do love that Lato song, and I have listened to it quite a few times, but it's not an undeniable banger just yet.
Oh yeah, In the Club totally is yeah, it's fire.
On the subject of Coolio, because I did have in my notes, obviously passed away. Has anybody seen the incredible, well, I mean that in the way that I can't believe it exists. It was actual ITV mainstream television. Michael Barrymore covered it for a series called Michael Barrymore's My Kind of Music in 1998. It's so Alan Partridge, but Alan Partridge is like 1994. So Michael Barrymore's still doing things that are accidental Partridge way after the advent of Partridge. It's this primetime piece of television where Michael Barrymore decides to take 5 minutes to rewrite the verses of See You When You Get There by Coolio. And then he just patronises this gospel choir that are in the studio by like just perching next to them and doing this really crap Carlton dad dance, whilst he just looks at them and sings off key. And they just keep doing key changes and it keeps getting more preposterous. Check it out. I've gone down a rabbit hole because he not only did Coolio See You When You Get There, but he also did Backstreet's Back by the Backstreet Boys, including the dance. So Michael Barrymore clearly thought these were songs worth covering and the nation needed to hear these.
I can't judge any bad dancing to rap music. If you see me jigging to In the Club at 3 a.m. while smashed, I assure you it's worse than any dancing he's ever done in his life.
No, there's something very minstrel show about Barrymore's dancing on My Kind of Music.
Fair enough. I'll have to check it out.
Sounds incredible.
I did meet Coolio, had a smoke with Coolio, talked about the process behind the making of Gangsta's Paradise. So to get back to what we were talking about, yeah, Gangsta's Paradise is an undeniable banger. I'm also going to give Ready or Not by the Fugees an undeniable banger score as well.
Oh, nice. Can I make the noise rather than you putting the sound effect in?
I'm only agreeing through nostalgia reasons.
Yeah, but nostalgia has a massive effect when you listen to this kind of music. I've just spent the past week listening to early 90s hip-hop, and it's surprising how many tracks that were largely background music to me before, I'm now like, yes, this is one of the greatest albums of all time. So we'll get onto that in a bit. I'm sure there's been some decent albums since we last got together and discussed. People have been to gigs. I have. Let's start with Tom, shall we?
Yeah, so I haven't listened to that much new music because
Shocker.
I've dropped off because every new album that comes out by a band I already knew, I've been disappointed by. Like Jockstrap, okay, their new album. It's fine, but I was so excited by the singles and the EPs in the lead up to it that the album's just really disappointing compared to the sheer craziness of what they did before. Like, Zia Lanada released an album this year. I don't like it as much as the first one. Nordic Giants, a band I absolutely loved, released an album this year. not as good as either of their first two, still decent. And so I Watch You From Afar, one of the greatest like math rocky bands of all time, released an album this year that I haven't been able to get into. And I think I've just got to the point where I'm fed up of disappointment. I mean, Red Hot Chili Peppers have released 2 albums this year. You know it's a shit year when Red Hot Chili Peppers release 2 albums.
I've listened to the first one and I can't really remember it, other than there's a song called Aquatic Mouth Dance, which I quite liked because of its weirdness. I haven't listened to the second one yet. I've got about 3 or 4 albums that I've still got to get through, and that's on there.
If you're into like black metal and doom, this year there are some real... I'm not either particularly, but there's some amazingly reviewed albums in those genres, and there's a couple of interesting punk records, like Soul Glow is very interesting, and they're worth checking out. I've been so disappointed by the new stuff. I've been going down a bit of an arc-tangent rabbit hole and listening to the bands I liked who played there years ago. I think the only album, I may have mentioned it in the last episode, that I really like, the Atota So album, where they get a load of guest vocalists in. That's really good. And Aisling Whiting's voice... And she's in a band called Sang Freud, who've only released 2 tracks like 3 years ago, and they're both incredible. That was really good. But no, apart from that, actually, one thing I do want to mention, shameless plug, because this might be out before the 17th of December. Our band has a gig at the Nowhere on the 17th of December. There you go. That's mine and Martyn's.
In Plymouth,
England. Yeah.
Yeah.
For all our worldwide listeners.
Yeah.
Hey, we get listeners in Australia, I'll have you know.
Right, so come to Plymouth and come and watch us at the Nowhere. The gig's free.
That's probably me on a VPN.
So come to Plymouth and watch my band.
Jim, what have you been doing?
I've been listening to a bit of the old music. I'm quite enjoying the new October Drift album. That's something Martyn would definitely be into if he's not listened to that already.
Tell me why.
It's bad.
Because it's a little bit grungy, and you like your grungy stuff.
I'm up for
Because it's
recommendations.
miserable and grungy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
You like that, Martyn?
you'll love it. Went to see the Menzingers yet again the other week. That was pretty amazing. Always like to see the Menzingers. They were supported by this band called Joyce Manor, who I'd never really listened to much. They were pretty good, fun, sort of punky stuff.
Hang on, Joyce Manor. That's a really cool name, actually.
Is it?
I really
Good.
Yeah, that's a good name. October Drift.
Martyn's got a notebook.
You're writing it down.
Hold the fucking phones. Martyn has got... We've been doing a podcast now for over 2 years, and this is the first time Martyn's got a notebook out live.
To be fair, Martyn, I just listened to a snippet of it, and yeah, you'll fucking love it.
Will I? Well, I'm so going to fucking get into that. Okay. Nice. Thanks, James.
Yeah.
I'll let you know, man.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, in fact, I'm off to a gig a bit later on tonight.
Yes.
Marlon Williams, who's a New Zealand singer-songwriter, kind of folky, country-ish sort of vibes. So, yeah, like a mate literally messaged me earlier tonight saying... come along, I've got a spare ticket. So, looking forward to that.
Yeah, you might have to duck out of this podcast a little bit early for that. So, apologies in advance to the listener if they miss you too much.
I'll be treated to my absence shortly.
Martyn, give us the lowdown.
Well, I've been listening to this fucking awesome new band that are up and coming, and they're amazing. They're called The Lost Hours. I've been listening to them lots because, like, joking aside, I had a bit of a creative block recently, and which doesn't happen very often, and it really worried me. I was like, kind of, I went through a really bad phase of not being able to come up with the guitar parts that I usually would, and through the guidance of my bandmates, they kind of helped me through that process. And so recently I've been basically listening to my own band a lot just to fucking get in that frame set. But also on the related to that, I've been listening to a lot of Interpol a lot. I'm obsessed with Interpol. They're like one of my favorite bands of all time, and Editors and The Strokes, and that whole wave of post-2000s post-punk, and just to get ideas and stuff. And I find that a real fertile kind of period of guitar playing, and it really helps. But I recently discovered a band called White Rabbits, and they released 3 albums, I think. I don't know if Tom's heard of them, but they're fucking amazing. They're like kind of very much the kind of New York post-punk scene, part of that whole Strokes, Interpol sort of thing. Very closely related to a band called The Walkmen, were part of that whole...
I know The Walkmen, yeah. Everybody actually knows them, they just don't know they know them.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's heard the Rat. Everyone's heard the Rat. It turns up in soundtracks and stuff. So I've been listening to a lot of like that edgy post 2000s like post punk kind of Joy Division influence stuff a lot, just to get ideas, but more for inspiration than anything else. And it's really, really helped. And I found that like through my own playing that like less is more, you know, just one note can say more than, you know, playing a lot of fucking stuff.
Oh no, I always thought that was a very convenient mindset to have. Less is also easier.
Yeah, that is also true. Martin's going to find this one. I sent some recordings of our practice to a producer to maybe go into a studio and record some stuff, and his first response was, "Oh, you guys sound like Block Party."
Yeah, that's a good.
which
good
I really like. I really like.
I do,
but
too.
I know that the other members of the band will not like that.
But I think that's for me and Tom, kind of like ally.
And Block Party were great. In their first album's fantastic. Like Eating Glass is an undeniable banger. Putting it out there.
I don't know it.
You do. You just don't know.
I know Helicopter.
Oh, that's an undeniable banger too.
Yeah, it's an undeniable
I'd agree
banger.
that Helicopter's an undeniable banger. Yeah.
I always thought.
Oh God, everything's getting in. Can I put forward Where the Slime Live by Morbid Angel?
Yes. Yeah, that should get in, guaranteed.
I have listened to it, and
it is an undeniable banger, isn't it?
Undeniable. The fact that it's being denied is not right.
Yeah, you cannot deny it.
No.
Interesting fact: Paul Banks, who's like the main guy from Interpol, he is a massive hip hop head. He loves fucking hip hop more than he loves any other form of music, which is quite interesting, I think.
I didn't care for that because you broke up our Where the Slime Lives conversation for this.
I'm a post-punk guitar player, but I fucking love hip hop, and I kind of like relate to it.
Yeah, but I discovered earlier you were just saying about the Strokes and all that stuff, and you were like, yeah, post-punk. So no, they're UK indie with all the other rubbish bands. You don't say post-punk, they're bloody indie. Don't make it... That's the genre they are for. They're not post-punk, they're indie.
They are so post-punk.
No, they're not.
I classify that as garage rock.
I know they're not shed rock.
They're indie.
Yeah, it is indie. It is indie. You know, you're right, Alex, actually. You are dead right. It is, like, totally, like, indie.
Now admit they're crap. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Sorry. I'm on a roll.
While you're on your roll, what have you been up to? What can you tell us?
I've listened to Zero Music. Oh, actually, I do like it. I listened to the newest Cypress Hill album, Back in Black, because I didn't know they'd released a new one, and I've listened to probably the last 2 new ones, to be honest. I was like, I'll give them another go. They haven't got a DJ Muggs, the guy usually produces their albums, doing it, so I was a little bit dubious, but no, it's pretty good. It's not bad,
it's
actually.
Really key to their sound.
It's not a bad album. It's not amazing. It's only sort of 7 out of 10. Not enough for a fan of her older stuff to just turn it off instantly. It sounds close enough. So,
what does it sound like compared to their debut?
It's got like a sort of like dark vibes and that. It's a bit like, you know, Cypress Hill are kind of known for that. It's a bit like House of Pain sort of style, isn't it? Where like, you know, that's that exact time in hip hop where everything just had the record scratch and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So the early stuff was that. This stuff's a little less like that, but it's still kind of kept the darker sort of tones of their usual stuff. So I liked it. Basically, they've gone away from that horrible era when they were doing, you know, all rap metal, and then they went back to pop sort of rapping, and then basically they've lost popularity enough to now be able to put an album out which they don't care is going to be ultra famous or not, you know. So it's alright. It was good. Good album. I'd recommend people giving it a go if they've fallen out of love with their group.
Yeah, I gave it a listen. I quite liked it.
It's not bad.
It was just like, it made me want to listen to the older Cypress Hill stuff.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Which is good, obviously. Maybe I wouldn't have gone back and listened to a shitload of Cypress Hill albums again if I hadn't.
I think I had quite a few strong choruses on it as well. At first, I was like, this sounds kind of, I might as well just go back to the old stuff. But then there were a few hooks I quite enjoyed. I found myself sort of rapping to myself for a little bit. I've completely forgotten what they are now, because it's like 2 months ago. But, it was, it's good. 1 thumb up, not 2. I can't give it 2 yet. Other than that, no more music. I've been in Italy for 2 weeks. So, I know, look at me jet setting around. Yeah, I went to Naples, Rome, and then Venice. It was pretty good. I'm so goddamn sick of looking at pictures of the Mother Mary and just statuettes of Roman guys. Like, I swear that's all our country has. That's it. Like, if the Romans didn't exist in Italy, they'd be buggered. Their museums would be empty.
To be fair, the pictures of the Mother Mary are predominantly not from the First Roman Empire.
Well, whatever.
Considering the First Roman Empire wasn't Catholic or Christian until Constantine.
But then it did become Christian, so...
I knew there was a really good reason why Tom needed to be on this podcast.
No, I knew that too, but there tends to be a lot of religious shit in Italy, I'll tell you that. They bloody love that Jesus. Go mad for him, they do. But yeah, it was a really good trip, good food, good times, very expensive drinks. That's what I'll take home.
I've been away myself. I went not out of the UK, but I've been around Brighton, London, Kent. I went to see a couple of gigs in that time. I went to see progressive rock band Arena. They played in Camden. It was fine. There's not really a lot of the original members left. I think it's just the keyboard player and the drummer who used to be in Marillion. Not really my kind of thing, but I went along and they were good. Off the cuff, I went to see an R&B singer called Eva Lazarus in Brighton. She was excellent. She's got huge energy when she performs. There's a bit of drum and bass mixed into her album Brandy Kisses as well, so it's quite a good project. And she's got a lot of charisma. I was right at the front. It was good to dance to. We're all off to see Kendrick Lamar in Manchester next month as well. We might even look to do a sort of video diary podcast. Speaking of which, there is more stuff on the blog now. I have written a review of the most recent Muse album, which I think is their worst album to date.
That took some doing as well, didn't it?
Go on, Tom.
It's awful, but it's their second. I actually bought the CD in the hope that I'd get the pre-order tickets to see them at Home Park, and I didn't, so I spent money on that shit and then missed out on tickets, so that's really bad. It's not their worst album, but it's definitely their second worst.
What would you say is their worst album?
Oh, the one with the United States of Eurasia on it.
Tom, what would you say is their best album?
Oh,
just out of interest.
Now, that's a really tough one because actually, my favourite Muse album is probably Absolution, but only just.
Yeah, for me, it's either the second or third album was their best.
Yeah, that's Origin of Symmetry or Absolution.
Yeah,
I listened to them both back to back the other day. Origin of Symmetry is so far and
Which one has Starlight and
Black Holes and Revelations?
Yeah,
that's their fourth album.
2006.
That's a good album.
It's a good album, yeah. I prefer it to Absolution.
It's got high moments in it, like Starlight is brilliant. I think Absolution is they seem to, after Origin of Symmetry, they seem to want to have had a concept behind their albums. They're trying to do the whole concept album thing. And I think Absolution's the only one of those albums where they actually got it right on. I think they've just got the formula worse on every album since then.
I'm not sure which I prefer. I've always, I'd like to think it's some Origin of Symmetry, but I don't know. I think some of their best songs are on the third one. I think some of them might be better. I don't know.
That's my thing. I'd love Origin of Symmetry to be my favourite Muse album, but it just isn't.
If you want to hear my thoughts on Muse, go check out the article I did on the blog. There'll be more coming from that and more YouTube videos as well that I've got ideas for. In terms of new music that I've been listening to, I've gone through quite a lot of new music that's been coming out. We've had albums from the 1975, Being Funny in a Foreign Language, which I thought was the most concise of their releases. It's 40-something minutes as opposed to their normal hour and 10 or whatever. It's a better experience in that manner. I do think that Matt Healy is just a little bit pretentious with his lyrics, though, and sometimes he's gone for like a stream of consciousness style, and sometimes you just think, oh, mate, you're just being a bit of a dick.
You've literally just described every Prince song. Go on.
Drink. Also, we've had a new album from the Arctic Monkeys, which came out on Friday. I listened to that the night it came out. The Car, it's called. Stupid name for an album. The whole album is a metaphor for the car. It's quite hard to unravel. It's an extension of the sound that they had on Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino. It sounds like an album from the 1970s. It sounds like something like Paul McCartney or John Lennon would write post-Beatles. And he's got this crooning style of vocal that he's now adapted all the time.
I found it really dull. I think he's running out of ideas. I think his voice isn't strong enough to sing the songs that he's writing. It's... people are going to buy it. And there's so... Like, this... It's another example. When I say this year's been full of disappointing releases, that was another one. Like, they've made some great albums. This is not one of them.
I do like some of the ideas that he does have. There'd Better Be a Miracle being the first single and the opening track. It's actually about the fact that fans are demanding that there's a big hit on the album, i.e. there better be a miracle on this album. And it's quite a good idea when mixed in with like other songs like Big Ideas, which is about him sitting down to perform a song, but he's got nothing to sing. It's just the orchestra. It's quite meta in a way, but he does have this tendency to be a little bit overly verbose and showing off with his writing skills that I don't think he really has. It sounds like a plastic soul. So David Bowie in 1975 did Young Americans and called it Plastic Soul because it was an imitation of the soul acts that were going on at the time. This is a imitation of the imitation, and that's why I like it, but it doesn't come off as completely authentic for me.
Can I just say, I've just listened to like about 30 seconds of October Drift, and fuck yes, yes, mate. Right up my street.
Well, you're welcome, Martin. The whole album's great.
One album that I did like, and it is very much a grower. I thought it was okay on first listen, and now I really fucking love this album. It's Steve Lacy and Gemini Rights. It's this alternative R&B album that's just got some really good sleeper hits on it. Bad Habit got to number 8 in the UK, actually. Did really well on a mainstream level. It's just hook after hook, and it's really cool. There's some really good guitar playing. He's got a Prince vibe to his falsetto. He was in a band called The Internet, who came from the Odd Future collective.
Oh yeah, I've heard of
and they've been doing stuff since the early 2010s, and now they've all kind of broke out on their own. I mentioned Sid; she was the lead singer.
I've made my note.
He's made his note. Yeah, Steve Lacy, Gemini Rights is a brilliant album. Probably going to be in my shortlist for album of the year. As will Eliza's A Sky Without Stars. Eliza is now known mononymously, but she was formerly known as Eliza Doolittle. So you may remember she had a hit with Back Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag. That one. No?
Don't know it.
It narrows it down.
You've ruined my day. I didn't know that.
He didn't sing it in tune, but I do know it, yeah.
I might know it.
Formerly of early 2010s pop stardom, is now broken out into neo-soul. Her last couple of records have been quite jazzy and abstract. This one's really dark. The lead single, Straight Talker's got a really thumping bass line on it. There's songs on it called Dripping, which is awesome, On the Cusp. And it's just a bit more introspective and dark, and I imagine that's going to be on my top 3 albums of the year. So that's the kind of new music that I've been through. There's a lot that I still need to get through this year. Blink-182, they are back with Tom DeLonge. So there's an album coming out from them at the beginning of next year, I believe. Paramore are also releasing a new record early next year. So it's a big time for the revival of pop punk. Is that happening?
Well, with the new Paramore song...
The new Paramore single is not a pop punk single.
It is.
From what their last 3 projects have been.
The new Paramore song is fucking ace. It's fucking really cool. And Paramore have gone in more of a post-punk direction. I think they've gone in more minimalist, kind of like less emo sort of thing. And they're kind
sort
of
indie
more
vibes,
edgy.
Yeah, last couple of albums have been headed in a more power pop direction, I'd say, than a pop punk.
The last song that I heard was very edgy. It was very like kind of 80s post-punk thing going on, you know, which really works for them.
He's talking about the track This Is Why.
Yes, I am talking about the track This Is Why.
I have a really hard time like hearing like when you talk about Paramore, people say they and the band, and it's like It's not a band, because there was a band, and then when they got signed to the big label, they only signed her, so the rest of them quit, and now they've just got hired help. So it's not a band.
It's Hayley Williams and group of people, whoever she wants to play with. Like that's what Paramore.
They are now music by committee. They can fuck off. It's probably quite good, though. It's probably quite good.
Panic at the Disco now. Panic at the Disco is just like the singer's solo project, isn't it?
I've listened to some of that, and I actually quite like it.
Oh, the songs have no structure in that Panic at the Disco album.
Yeah.
It was infuriating.
I like some of the ideas.
I like a song which lacks structure. Like, I like freeform stuff as much as the next person, but like, that was just a fucking mess. I've thought of an album I did like, actually, this year, that I've totally forgot about, and they've released 2 albums this year, and they're quite good. It's King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
They're very good. Justin Hawkins does a Justin Hawkins Reacts to that band, and that's quite fun to watch as well.
I like his YouTube channel. He's good. Let's talk about early 90s hip-hop, shall we? Jim, you are going to have to slide out of here to go to a gig. So what I thought would be a nice way of opening tonight's discourse would be to say, we would like to hear your 3 picks and give us a bit of detail on each. We'll start off with, what is your favourite hip-hop album? And we're talking specifically the early 90s, which we've defined as 1990 to 1994.
Okay, so before I go through any of this, I'm just going to say I am absolutely not the biggest hip-hop fan in the world. And as much as I love hip-hop, and particularly early 90s hip-hop, I've never really particularly dived into it on any level other than the surface, like super mainstream, everyone knows these albums and rappers and producers level.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I mean, once you've listened to all of Will Smith's albums, what you got left, you know? Like
Code Red.
Yeah, I mean, after what did hip hop end with Millennium? You know what I mean?
Well, there's an argument to be made.
I mean, it definitely never improved after Wild Wild West.
No,
None of us are hip-hop experts. Martyn says that he was around at the time and considers himself to be somewhat of an expert. We were going to get Dave, our resident hip-hop expert, on tonight. Unfortunately, he got called into work, so he won't be making his return. He will be back on a future episode. But he's given us his picks, so I can add them into the conversation as we go if they come up.
My album pick is Ready to Die by the Notorious B.I.G.
Who was Dave's favourite MC? It's a great album. I've listened to that one myself a couple of times. What makes it stand out for you?
It's just how he raps is fucking incredible. Like, it's just got this perfect flow, and it's also gritty and like down to earth, talking about the environment he's grown up in and had to live in. It's not obviously like anything I can relate to because I'm a middle class English white man, but it's just, I feel it's a really important Alex album.
I mean, to be fair, that you get to say that about him, I guess. So
it just kind of really helps you appreciate sort of what people had to go through, I guess, living in the early 90s America.
Don't bail him out, Glenn, keep going. Go on, James. You got till 8 o'clock, you've got 20 minutes. So he's from the
It was
hood, is he,
recorded
James?
in New York City in 2 stages during 1993 and 1994. In 1994, Biggie was 21 years old when he recorded the album. In 1992, Biggie was signed to the Uptown Records label.
I hear they signed people like Biggie
A&R.
Smalls.
Sean Puffy Coombs.
See, this is why. Okay, this is why I deduct points from Biggie.
Sorry, I've had to start reading from Wikipedia because I'd run out of things.
You brought it up with your research that you've done there. That
Yes.
Biggie Does
It
also
did sound important.
with Biggie comes Puffy. That's why I can't give Biggie he's not my favourite MC, it's not my favourite album, just because I really don't get Sean Puffy Coombs. P. Diddy.
Well, if you want to, James can read out Wikipedia more.
No.
Yeah, I can carry on. There's a lot more here about Sean Puffy.
Yeah, look up Puffy. Hit the link.
Coombs, even. Coombs.
He's just so bang average.
When executive producer Sean Puffy Coombs was fired from Uptown, Biggie's career hung in limbo, as the album was only partially completed. After a brief period dealing drugs in North Carolina, Biggie returned to the studio the following year on Coombs' new Bad Boy Records label, possessing a smoother, more confident vocal tone, and completed the album. Isn't that incredible?
It is.
Yes.
The thing about that album is it's very varied. When I listen to early 90s hip-hop, there are clearly lots of different styles breaking through at once, and it's like a melting pot of all these things that would become big in the future. You've got abstract thoughts that you Tribe Called Quest. You've got your big braggadocious hip-hop, in-your-face, belligerent style, Ice Cube, Eazy-E, and you've got your poets, your Nas's and your Ghostface Killers.
Robbie Williams.
Biggie is an amalgamation of all of those in that one album. It's all there. He can do your funky cuts to get down to. He can do introspective hip-hop. It's just such a wonderful mishmash of styles on that album, and there isn't really anybody who could have fronted it better than Biggie, because he's got that flow that is just, he can be laid back, but then he can just machine gun it into your ears, and just be so aggressive. And he's got everything. So yeah, it's a great choice for a great album.
I'm gonna confess something. I've never listened to any of his albums. I really should. It's been on my list, and I just never have. I just get told he's amazing.
I actually prefer Life After Death, I think.
I've liked every song I've heard by him. I've just never sat down and listened to him.
Martyn, you're quite quiet on Notorious B.I.G.'s Ready to Die.
I'm kind of letting you guys talk about Notorious B.I.G. because I've never listened to him.
Wow, okay.
I know of him, but like both of those rappers don't really mean much to me. You know, both Biggie and Tupac. You know, they're kind of part players in the big scene that was going on
They
at the
ascended
time.
in the mid-90s for me as well.
Yeah, they were mid to late 90s is when they got huge.
Apocalypse Now.
Both of those rappers were way more famous after they died, and that's the sad thing.
You can't take
that's the tragic thing.
Biggie or Tupac, that they were amazing in their lifetime, though. That's why they do have the legacy that they have.
Yeah, they were. I agree with that. They were amazing.
They did sell a lot of records in their time as well.
Yeah, they did, but they both got famous after they died, and like, you know, that's kind of a fact. But like the rappers I want to talk about, they were massive at the time that they were doing their
So Jim, who would you say is your favourite producer of the period?
So producer, obviously I've given my caveat that I'm very surface level, and like one of my favorite hip hop albums is, and it's obviously pre 90s, but Straight Out of Compton.
Oh yes,
by NWA. And yeah, Dr. Dre. He's produced some incredible albums over the years, and like some of the stuff he's produced is just like used in studios as like the kind of pinnacle of production for particular levels, like the bass on Housewife on his 2001 album. Like just listen to that song, because the bass is fucking perfect. And obviously he produced Into Club.
Yes,
of course.
50 Cent.
Yeah, that is on our
which
banger
has
list.
tragically been denied undeniable banger status, along with Where the Slime Live and Eye of the Tiger.
Oh, don't annoy me. Just don't reel off all the ones I put forward.
Not go there.
Hey,
I agree with you. I think Dr. Dre is one of the greatest hip hop producers of all time. His production on NWA's first album is fucking second to none. It really is second to none. I don't think personally, I've never enjoyed his production more than on that record. and it was hardcore. But he eventually, like, for whatever reason, he got more and more like kind of nuanced in his production technique, to the point where he kind of invented the G-funk thing. You know, he totally invented that laid back West Coast sitting by the pool thing. When you think about it, like Dr. Dre came from quite hardcore, like polemic, like kind of political protest stuff, straight through to like kind of we're just chilling around the pool, like fucking enjoying ourselves. You know, Dr. Dre's musical journey is a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah,
It's become more and more like nuanced and more like I don't want to use the word mellow, but he's kind of like taken the edge out of his own music and made it more him and made it more The more successful he has become, the more his production technique has fitted his lifestyle that he lives in. So when he started out as a young black teenager in Compton, and it was all about like kind of angry, like fucking having a go at everything. And then like the more successful he became, he didn't try to pretend to be protest music anymore. He was kind of like going, actually, you know, I'm not bothered. I'm like kind of enjoying myself in my mansion. Let's just fucking have some of that, you know. And that's what I like about Dre. What I want to say about Dr. Dre is he is authentic. He's totally authentic in every way. And his musical journey has absolutely illustrated.
Yeah, he started in the World Class Wrecking Crew in the 80s, kind of doing this electro version of hip hop. Versatility really shows throughout his journey, as you've described it, Martin, because you listen to like late 80s, straight out of Compton. It's very different to even E. Phil for Zaggin, which was a 1991 NWA album.
Yeah, we don't talk about that album. It's very problematic.
Very problematic. I listened to it the other day. It's not a great album for the very reason of why would you let Eazy-E do a country song? Automobile is just terrible. And there's an actual rip-off of I'd Rather Be With You by Bootsy Collins called I'd Rather Fuck You, which is basically the same song with them just singing different words over the top of it. It's a really bizarre album, but the production is stellar throughout it. And you can hear the origins of his kind of whistling synths in that album. But then the reason why I've also gone for Dr. Dre as my favourite producer of the era is because you see that development in him, but then you add like some of the most iconic hip-hop bangers of all time are produced in this period by Dre. Ain't Nothing But a G Thing from The Chronic. You've got Gin and Juice, What's My Name from Doggy Style in 93. To go from NWA and then to go solo and do The Chronic and then to produce Doggy Style, I just think that body of work in the time shows the most versatility in terms of production. And yes, I think Dr. Dre, probably a lot of diehard hip-hop heads would say, well, he's clearly the guy that Q-Tip's referring to. Well, he's not. Hammer was the guy, but he's one of the guys that is Q-Tip's referring to when he's saying don't call hip-hop pop. Because Dr. Dre is one of the main reasons hip-hop became massive. 1995, he's got California Love coming out, and it's one of the biggest singles. He drove the mainstream appeal of hip-hop and transformed it into what he was doing in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was all Dre's beats. Had you not had that, hip-hop may have been stuck in a rut, because you can hear there's a lot of similarity in a lot of these ideas. And Dre was the one who pushed it forward and said, no, this is a bigger thing than just this culture. We're pushing it mainstream. We're going to take over. And say what you want about that kind of watering down hip-hop, but at least he went there. He was bold enough to take it away from just being a niche culture.
I think that outside of the 1990 to 94 window, Dre doesn't... I don't know that much about hip-hop, and Dre doesn't even make my top 5. If you compare... when you say about... So, I agreed with most of what you said until you said about Dre pushing it forward, and then you look at Jay Dilla or Madlib. Yeah. I mean, they pushed it forward. Dre just did the same sound that sold records, and that's fine. But I don't think he ever did anything particularly clever. It's almost like Dr. Dre is like the Pep Guardiola of hip hop, in that he's perfectly capable of being a producer, but he only ever works with people who are amazingly talented, who were already sort of big before he got there.
Yeah, but there's a reason they want to play with Dre.
But then he can't even coach a team to beat Liverpool.
I'm sure Dre couldn't coach a team to beat Liverpool either, but I hope he can prove me wrong.
When Liverpool is playing as they currently are, I'm sure we all could.
My problem with Dre is the same problem is a lot of hip-hop turns me off in that it becomes very samey when you listen to a whole album of it. The producer I've picked mixes it up a huge amount through an album rather than having very much one vibe. And Dre has a vibe, and it's if you want that, it's great. But I don't hear that versatility in what he's doing as a producer. I just don't hear it.
If you listen to The Chronic, you've got stuff that's iconic, like Ain't Nothing But a G-Thing, but you've also got Little Ghetto Boy, which is a Donny Hathaway sample, and it takes it in a more gospel direction. Clearly two very different tracks.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to 2001, there's like this. Admittedly, I know that album a lot better than I know The Chronic, but like there's a lot of variety across that album. And then if you just have a cursory glance through stuff that he's produced, like it's not all the same or even the same sort of hip hop.
When I say it all sounds the same, it's not that he's playing the same melodies. He's not repeating himself. It's just there's something in what he's producing that sounds. When you put any two Dre songs next to each other, maybe that's the hallmark of a producer. Maybe that's why people want to work with him. When you put two Dre songs next to each other, you can tell they're both his. His stamp is on it, not the stamp of the person rapping on it.
I would say that that's true of Jay Dilla as well.
Yeah, to a degree, but I think that I find Jay Dilla's instrumentation more interesting.
Yeah, I would agree with
I
you.
think I think as a producer, like when Dre was a struggling poor black man in Compton, his music was very angry, and like a lot of the samples he used and like a lot of his production techniques were very angry sounding, and the more and more like affluent that like his lifestyle became, the more lazy his production became. That's my attitude to Dre.
Because that Eminem song, what is it? I Need a Doctor, or it's called. Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
I remember because Dre produced that one, didn't he? And I don't think that sounds like any Dre song I've ever heard. But it sounds more commercial, if anyone. So I'm agreeing with Martyn. It kind of...
Yeah, his
kind of,
yeah, Dre became commercial. He just basically kind of like... He was amazing in the early days. He was incredible. Like, he was inventive because he didn't have much to go on. He only had his like little small creative records and stuff. And then the more and more successful he got, it was like the less creative he needed to be, if that makes sense.
I think it's more down to the software he started using. I think there's a reason why most music sounds very similar, because everyone uses the exact same software.
Yeah, I just think he got lazier and lazier in his career in going like, right, this is going to work, let's go with it, rather than before. Before when he was really struggling to like make it as a producer, when he had to really struggle to like find a sound that would like cut through, listen to the first NWA album, which was produced by Dre, which is a fucking classic. And then listen to like his latest stuff. It's just like kind of, well, he's just kind of going through the motions. It's going to, we'll do some G-Funk. Yeah, that'll be fine. Everyone will love that. Yeah.
I love that's a conversation has in a car on a drive to the studio. We'll just give him some more shit.
Let's give him some G-Funk. Let's have a whiny keyboard sound and let's have whatever. And like, whereas before it was like, let's have some fucking angry guitar in here. Like, and it wasn't even angry guitar. It was clean as fuck. But like, you listen to a track like Straight Outta Compton, the song, and it's like, it sounds fucking polemic. It sounds angry. It sounds ridiculously angry. But like later on, he's sitting around a pool with like babes with bikinis hanging around him.
I think one of the hallmarks of early 90s hip hop has definitely got to be the terrible choruses with the female vocalists. They never get very good vocalists, and they're always awful choruses. And it's like, I swear 50% of early 90s songs is that, including Dre.
Yeah, so thank God for Nate Dogg. After he appeared on 1992's The Chronic, he kind of changed that. I love his choruses. The Chronic is a great album. I completely see what you're saying, Martin, but I think that billionaire headphone brand Dr. Dre is a very different person.
Yeah, you're right. I think when you're talking about authenticity, you have to make music that fits the lifestyle that you're in.
Yeah.
So when Dr. Dre was first making music, he really was like living in the ghetto. He was like kind of struggling to be a black man in the ghetto. And when he made his money and stuff, what are we expecting him to do? Do that again? No, because it wouldn't be authentic. Yeah. So what we expect him to do is go, what, Dr. Dre, what are you going to make now? And he's like, well, I'm a billionaire. I'm going to make this fucking, like, you know, affluent music, you know? It's like...
For that reason, like, early 90s Dre, for me, is my favourite producer of the time. Because you can hear it's a Dre beat, because it's very constructed to be like that. I think at that time he was just perfect. Jim, who's your favourite MC of the period before you have to depart?
We'll hopefully make this one slightly quick, but I fear it won't be, because it's again NWA related, and this man is the best part of NWA.
Please say it's Ice Cube
for reasons that have been outlined before, because he is the political and aggressive
Ren.
He's got
of
NWA.
And
no, don't say easy. It's either Ren or Ice Cube. Come on.
Create some of the best and most influential
films
early
in the
90s hip hop
yeah.
albums, and 2 incredible films based on a particular day of the week. And his name is Ice Cube.
Oh, yes, man. Oh, mate, you are my favourite best friend ever.
Ice Cube is incredible. He's my second favourite.
Yes, Ice Cube. Fuck me, man, Ice Cube. Oh, carry on, James.
Well, I'm willing to hear you gush, Martin.
Mate, totally. Ice Cube is pretty much one of my favourite rappers of all time. So
I absolutely love Straight Outta Compton, and Ice Cube is the best bit on Straight Outta Compton. Yeah. And I really like America's Most Wanted. It's probably
what an album.
I'm hoping that one of you will have picked that.
It's up there, man. It was up there. It was either that or Fear of a Black Planet.
Anyway, I'll resort to Wikipedia. An ice cube is a small piece of ice which is typically rectangular as viewed from above and trapezoidal as viewed from the side. Ice cubes are products of mechanical refrigeration and are usually produced to cool beverages. They may be produced at home in a freezer with an ice tray or in an automated ice-making accessory. They may also be produced industrially and sold commercially.
No, this is like that Stuart Lee bit that just goes on and on and on and on. You went to the wrong Wikipedia page, Jim. You're supposed to go to the Wikipedia page for O'Shea Jackson Jr.
It's senior, not junior. I was literally just reading it. I was on it. I was going to...
Oh, no, you're right. It is senior. I was looking at his son.
Fact check.
Where's he got fact checked?
Made you look like a right kipper then.
You can argue as well, in the period we're talking about, specifically 1990 to 1994, that Ice Cube is the best MC of the period, because that's when all his bangers come from. It Was a Good Day, Steady Mobbing, No Vaseline, so many great, really aggressive, in-your-face songs. Most of them are disses at former bandmates and record label executives. So it's front-loaded with this hatred of other people, and he's just got such a chip on his shoulder at the time, and he's always saying about, I didn't have dinner with the president, and he makes references to not hanging around with Bill and Hillary on America's Most Wanted. He was so concerned with being anti-authority and anti-establishment. It's a bit of a shame that he became who he is now. I mean, he's still got the same energy, but he is clearly the very diluted version of Ice Cube that we have.
Everyone grows up, and that's just what it is, isn't it? Everyone grows up.
I don't begrudge him here. I mean, he's very successful, and he's made some good movies. He still continues to make some good songs, some guest verses now and again. It does make him a little bit more exciting. It's kind of the Andre 3000 effect. Appears on very little these days. Maybe drops an album. Andre 3000 hasn't dropped an album since Outkast, but Ice Cube doesn't drop albums very often. And I think that because he's not oversaturated, it has allowed him to enjoy some longevity as an icon. But definitively, his career was at its peak in this period, and he was just on fire. Every song. America's Most Wanted is such a great album. It's forward thinking. It talks about, I know it's kind of disrespectful in the delivery, but Yo-Yo's appearance, she was a female rapper on a mainstream hip hop album at the time, which was a big step forward, even though it is kind of disrespectful in the way it delivers it. But he did produce her album as well, or go on to write for her album.
I don't really have a lot to say about Ice Cube. Like, I appreciate he's really influential. It never spoke to me, so I never explored it in great detail. I think there's a problem I have with a lot of early 90s hip hop, and
I knew this was coming.
I'm going to do it now because it avoids doing it later, and it's because it's the flow that they have is nearly every rapper, and it comes from Sugar Hill Gang in the late 70s. It's always like dotted quavers, da 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 da. You know, that's how they flow their beats. And so I find when they do that, it's a bit like listening. It's a bit like when somebody from an Indian call center calls you, right? And you don't understand what they're saying. I can't understand what they're saying when they rap in that meter. And so, you know, it's like trying to listen to a foreign language. I'm not tuned into that. And it's that whole dotted quaver rapping, I lose what they're saying. So although I know they've got deep things to say and I can read them on a piece of paper, I lose what the words are. And Ice Cube is one of the people who raps in that way. And yeah, so it doesn't do it for me because of that. But I realise that is what people like about it. So I'm not going to sit and I'm not going to go, oh, it invalidates the genre. It doesn't. It's the part of the genre that is the gateway to the barrier to entry for people like me. I struggle to understand that. And Ice Cube is one of the people who was using that particular meter in his raps, and it's what he does, and it's why I can't understand it. And it's what turned me off Run the Jewels as well. They rap in that meter as well, and it just loses it for me. But if you understand that language, it's probably fucking fantastic.
I'm surprised that was your issue with it. I thought you were going to go maybe the more problematic themes in the music, because I don't know about everyone else, but when I'm listening to early 90s hip hop, it is kind of hard to avoid how morally conservative a lot of the rappers actually are in terms of homophobia and sexism. Certain times you let it slide, it's of its time, but that NWA album has a lot of songs that are just designed to be sexist, and that's it.
It's only a problem if you understand what they're rapping.
Well, yeah, I guess.
Can I step in here? And a perfect point to step in is the difference between West Coast and East Coast hip hop back in that time, because there was a very definite divide.
Yeah,
and West Coast hip hop was very much focused on gang culture and very much focused on like living in the hood and like trying to survive in that kind of like environment and stuff. And I won't talk any more about that because like, I have no connection with it. And that's why I don't really, even back then when I wasn't really into hip hop, I wasn't really into like the West Coast stuff. The East Coast stuff is very different. You've got like bands like Public Enemy and Gangstar and the Native Tongues and all of the like kind of socially conscious stuff that was absolutely the opposite of that. Absolutely the total, complete, like, what's the term of that? The fucking, the total black white fucking image.
The antithesis.
Yeah, total. That when you look at East Coast hip hop back in those days, it was very social consciousness. It was very much like. So in the West Coast, you had like, we got to run hoes, we got to like do crime, and we got to do fucking drive-bys and stuff. In the East Coast, it was very much like, all of this stuff is happening to us and we don't like it very much. So what can we do about it? And it was like, you had, Public Enemy are a great example of hip hop artists who are going like, how can we change the political environment to make it like more about equality? You know, they were talking about racism, they were talking about sexism and stuff. You will not hear any misogyny in a Public Enemy track, for instance. However, you'll hear lots of it in the West Coast stuff, which is like NWA, and you know, they were just trying to survive. But back in the East Coast, you had these hip hop artists who were like kind of intelligent enough to say like, hang on, this isn't right. You know, we are the underclass and we're going to fight it, regardless of gender or race or anything like that. With early 90s hip hop as well, it's like a lot of the East Coast artists, they were like kind of talking about their background as Black Americans, not in the sense of like, we're living in the ghetto and we've got a hoe and shit. They were like kind of, we're living in the ghetto, let's keep a conscious fucking focus on what our roots are. And they were very much like kind of focused on like being Black African Americans back then. So they were like very in touch with their African roots. And I think that's something that needs to be kind of like addressed. Like there was a real divide back then.
There's a clear distinction between West Coast and East Coast, and East Coast is more abstract. To segue into kind of my favourite album of the period quite nicely, most of my favourite albums are probably East Coast stuff. So you've got Step in the Arena by Gang Starr, Wu-Tang Clan's and the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, Scarface's The Diaries, well, that's more southern hip-hop, I'd say, actually. But my ultimate pick is what I think is perhaps the album that I love the most and got me into hip-hop the most after hearing it. It's Nas's Illmatic from 1994. Every song on that album is a banger. New York State of Mind, The World Is Yours, Halftime, Represent. So many good songs on that album. And it totally embodies what you were saying there, Martyn, because it's such a description of everyday life to an East Coast rapper. And that's all he's doing, is he's painting a narrative using poetry to describe what's going on in that world. And it's very different to the kind of money, bitches and hoes of the West Coast. And it develops on themes that Tribe Called Quest had put out in Low End Theory. It's very forward thinking. DJ Premier on production on some of the tracks it also connects it to East Coast records like Step in the Arena. I think Illmatic is Nas's best record. I don't think he ever got anywhere near that kind of success again. It's just one of those albums where even if you're not a big hip hop fan, you can put it on and really appreciate how each song is so well crafted. The lyrics are very accessible. I've been listening to hip hop so much, and now I consider sleep the cousin of death.
When I first got into hip hop, when I really first got into hip hop massively, was like it was I think it was Ice-T or Ice Cube. It was one of the ices. You know, all the ices you have these days.
Oh, where's Jim and his Wikipedia entry when you need it?
So many ices. One of them said like hip hop was the black CNN. It was like kind of like the news report of like what black life was really like. Now I think West Coast was about black life, about how they wanted it to be. But East Coast was about how it actually was.
Okay, that's a really good point.
You can't go out onto the street and enjoy your life without being arrested. Whereas in the West Coast, it was like, yeah, you can go out into the street and get arrested, but you'll pull a gat and you'll fucking shoot a cop or something.
Look at the music videos from the period. Like every West Coast video is like party that goes off the fucking chain.
Yeah.
Like shirtless, tattoos out, gang signs, like smoking, drinking copious amounts. Every
Bikini
East Coast,
babes and all that.
And every East Coast video is them all gathered around like a burning...
Yes, a burning fucking skip or something.
With beanies on, big jumpers on, they're really cold.
There is one important exception in the West Coast, though, which will come up in my album picks. So I agree with you. In general, I prefer East Coast rap, which is the precursor to what we now call conscientious hip hop, which is the genre of hip hop that I do engage with. Like Earl Sweatshirt's album, was it this year or last year, was fantastic. Absolutely loved that album as an album, it's not just good for hip hop. It's a good album that that I enjoy and I put on for pleasure, which I don't normally do with hip hop. But in general, I prefer East Coast to West Coast in that era, particularly, and in the few years after, actually. But there is one very, very big exception. The album that I picked is by a group called The Far Side. And I always get the fucking name wrong. It's called Bizarre Ride to the Far Side. Yeah, and it's I like their second album. Their second album is the album that got me into hip hop, because the album after this one, there's two reasons why I got into this band, into the Far Side. So I actually, again, there are a couple of hip hop acts who I follow. So like Outkast, my mum bought Aquemini on CD in 1998. Yeah,
amazing.
So I was introduced to Outkast by my mum buying Aquemini when it came out. You know, I was also introduced to Lemon Jelly by my mum and DJ Shadow by my mum as well. Yeah, I know, that's weird, right? But my friends from primary school had older brothers who all played in rock bands. And usually dismissed hip-hop, but they were all skateboarders. And in 1995, Lab in California came out with Jay Dilla's production on it, and they all absolutely loved that. So I'm this 8-year-old with guys who are like 17, 18, playing in bands around Plymouth, and they were really into this album. And I got into it at the time, and then I sort of dropped it. And then when I was about 14... there was a series of DVDs you could buy called Work of Director. Now, they're fantastic because it's all these art house directors. There was Michel Gondry, Anton Corbijn, Chris Cunningham. And basically these DVDs were double-sided DVDs that collected all of their music videos and short films. And one of them was by Spike Jonze, who directed a load of the Far Side's videos before Fat Lip left. So I think that's Lab in California era as well. And yeah, so I just really like The Far Side. The Far Side are sort of what Outkast copied later. It's what they said. What was it? There's a description in one of the music journalists does an interview with them, and they said, we're not trying to be authentic, we're trying to be original. And that's what that album is. It's absolutely fantastic. It does things that no other hip hop album had done. It actually sounds fucking like massive at points. There's a lot more musically going on, and that's why I'm also going to put this segues in neatly. I'm also going to put my producer as Jay Swift on that album, because on that album he's just perfect. Like, the production on that album is so much more intricate and clever than anything else that was going on in hip hop at the time. I mean, like, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I know it doesn't review as well, but I'd say that the Far Side album is every bit as well produced and well put together, and it's probably even more crafted than Low End Theory.
Ooh, yeah, that's one of my favourite albums of all time you're talking about there.
Do you know this Far Side album?
I actually went to download it today, and unfortunately Apple Music has it, but there's a track missing called The Officer. I don't know why. I haven't looked at it.
Yeah, there is. That's the only track missing.
And being the kind of weird-brained weirdo that I am, I didn't download it because it was missing a track. I did listen to the single, Pass Me By, or whatever it's called, and that was great, and I could definitely listen to more of it. So it's been added to the top of my must listens.
Officer is one of the best tracks, but like, yeah, I'm totally in 100% agreement with Tom on this. I think it is equally as well produced as anything that has been like made in that era of hip hop. It is fucking amazing.
I know the Far Side's later stuff, which is where Jay Dilla got his breakthrough, along with Slum Village and things like that as well. And he is a different level of producer for me. But I kind of didn't really consider the Far Side in this conversation, just because the tracks that I know are later, so they didn't really fall into this era for me.
As soon as it was hip-hop groups from the 90s, I was like, Far Side. And this first album is as good as Lab in California, and I don't think anything they did after that was anywhere near as good.
There's a great video. I think it's called Drop by Far Side. Came later on,
yeah.
And it was the great video. Was like it had the Beastie Boys on it.
That's the Spike Jonze directed one. That's Spike Jonze directed those videos.
It's all backwards, isn't it?
Yeah,
they're all going backwards.
He's got one hell of a videography on him. I mean, he did those videos. Fatboy Slim's Praise You as well.
I'd have to give it a listen. To be honest, while you guys were talking, I was listening to bits of it. You just kind of just go through it randomly, and yeah, the flow seems pretty good. I like it. To be honest, I've got to admit, like, my favourite sort of rap music isn't big sounding, if you know what I mean. Like, that's obviously, like, with the raps, the music changes and is a lot more intricate. Basically,
jazz rap.
The exact reason you like it. But yeah, I'm the opposite. I love when a rap, like rappers just have, like, the one hook, like, melodically. They might change it for a chorus a little bit, a few pauses, and then get back,
You like your bops.
Yeah. I just like the rap being the bit that sells it rather than the theatrics around it as much. It's got to be a good hook. You like the theatrics around it. I just like a good hook.
And the reason I brought this up is because this is Far Side of West Coast, but they're so unlike anything else coming out on the West Coast at that time.
Exactly. Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah.
I would say that this Far Side album particularly is a huge influence on Outkast's later stuff, not on their 1994 album, which is
Southern Player List of Cadillac Music.
Yeah, which is by far Outkast's weakest album. But then it is their debut. Yeah, but it's
that basically brings to my point that, like, why early 90s hip hop is pretty much a what's the word? A transitional phase, in the sense that, like, a bit like where it went from hair metal to grunge. Kind of like everyone was going like, "Oh, Nirvana killed hair metal" and all that. I was like, yeah, it kind of did, but it kind of didn't also, because, like, there was still the elements of hair metal in there.
I know what you're saying.
And a bit like East Coast, West Coast rap was like kind of like there were still elements of, like, the West Coast kind of hedonism with the East Coast social commentary stuff. They kind of met in the middle somewhere, like in the early 90s.
Like maybe late 80s and early 90s hip hop is what essentially gave rap music its attitude now, if you know what I mean? Before it was just party music. It was just fun party music. So the attitude and aggression behind it was purely from this era, which is still carried to this day, like 25 years down the line. Like, well, 40 years down the line, sorry.
It's almost like early 90s hip hop for me is like kind of, let's have a good time. We're black, but let's fucking celebrate being black.
I'm just going to say that, like, I'm speaking as the hip hop novice here, right? But you could argue that Gil Scott-Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised is probably one of the first rap albums, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And now you're getting into my kind of close to my favourite MC of all time.
What, Gil Scott-Heron? That's a bold step.
No, not Gil Scott-Heron. No, very close.
Let's hear it. Martyn, who is your favourite MC of all time?
My favourite MC of all time is Chuck D from Public Enemy.
Of course.
I mean, that is a good decision.
Chuck D basically took Gil Scott-Heron's message, his fucking whole delivery, and brought it into, like, this violent, fucking huge, like, kind of like very protest, very, very fucking, like, kind of like intelligent, kind of like going, we could do the Sex Pistols, we can do, like, fucking this, Chuck D basically was like, I can do Gil Scott-Heron, but bring it into the very violent kind of like very punk ethic, but in hip hop. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does. I mean, this is what I'm saying. So I think that Gil Scott-Heron's Revolution Will Not Be Televised is 1971.
Yeah.
So I think that rap becoming good time music starts with the Sugar Hill Gang, which is like 78, 79, sometime around then.
79. First recorded mainstream hip-hop song is King Tim Ill by the Fatback Band, which came out a couple months before Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. Back end of 1979. Became famous in 1980.
We're talking 79.
I think you could argue that Revolution Will Not Be Televised is certainly a precursor to rap, if not one of the first rap records.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to say that, then rap, if you would argue that, which I would, you'd argue that rap actually started political, and it was Chuck D who brought it back to political. He rescued it from the doldrums of Sugar Hill Gang doing nursery rhymes on Sesame Street. I'm sure that happened. That wasn't an acid trip, was it? Sugar Hill Gang were definitely on Sesame Street. I'm pretty sure they were,
yeah. It's a good point.
I think, Tom, your pitchfork analysis of the history of hip-hop was pretty accurate there. And it's like Chuck D brought, the Sugar Hill Gang into, the early 90s.
Yeah, before that, the golden era of hip-hop in the 80s, having listened to a lot of it. I do like a lot of it, but a lot of Run DMC stuff and a lot of Big Daddy Kane, Slick Rick, that kind of stuff.
LL Cool J.
It's party vibes. And and Chuck D is one of the first, maybe not the first, but one of the first since Gil Scott-Heron's proto-rap days.
Chuck D was probably the most angriest of MCs to come out of the late 80s, early 90s. He gave that transition. Whereas the West Coast were happy to talk about gang banging and stuff, the East Coast were not. They were kind of we are struggling, we are fucking not happy, and we're not happy with the political system, we're not happy with the social system. And you had an MC like Chuck D to speak out about it, and talk about it, and absolutely talk about it in such an angry way, but not an angry way, but an intelligent way, kind of in a very intellectual way. And I think that's why I love early 90s hip hop so much, is because they eloquently put across their thoughts and views across in a way that we could understand, that the white man could understand. Yeah. And I don't think that the West Coast were able to do that in such a way. They were just going yeah, we're in Compton, motherfucker, we're shooting each other up, and all that stuff. And you had the likes of Chuck D and Guru from Gangstar, and the whole Native Tongues posse. They were just kind of going, we're intelligent, we're fucking talking about this, we're talking about it on a intellectual level, And I think that's why, for me, early 90s hip hop is so important, because so many artists that were talking about it on even Ice Cube, who was West Coast, came out of the NWA. He was in NWA, for fuck's sake. He came out and was just this is what... Listen to a track like Burn Hollywood Burn, and you kind of go, it's a polemic on the whole idea that the only way that a black person could get an acting part is if they were fucking Sam Crowed it, you know what I mean? It's fucking wonderful. It's fucking wonderful. It was a wonderful moment of pure social commentary, and it took a few rappers to just kind of tell us about it, the likes of Chuck D and Ice Cube, they were telling us about it. The likes of Eazy-E and Dr. Dre, they weren't. They were just kind of they were just kind of yeah, we're stuck in this West Coast attitude. But the likes of fucking Ice Cube, Chuck D, and they were no, this is big, this is huge, this is this massive social thing that we need to address, and they were telling us about it. They were shouting at us about it.
There was still a lot of space for the silly side of hip hop, though. You bring up Eazy-E, and I have such a tumultuous relationship with Eazy-E's music, because every now and again he'll pull out a true, I would say, Real Motherfucking G's by Eazy-E is an undeniable banger, because that song, it never fails to get me hyped. Never fails to get me hyped.
I do like that song.
He's like the Scrappy-Doo of hip-hop. He never relents, no matter how shit his actual bars are. he just never relents and gives it the same energy every time. Even if the song is just awful, like Automobile, as I mentioned earlier. He does some absolute shit, but his delivery, it strikes a frequency which a part of my brain goes, this is technically terrible, but because of his cadence and his vocal tone, I can't help but love it.
His rapping may not be the best, but he's got one of the best natural, like, rapping voices, isn't he? He can rap badly and it'll still sound pretty good. You know?
He's like a less technically good Method Man, in that Method Man is all about the rhythm and the tone of his voice. And Method Man is not the most technical rapper in the Wu-Tang Clan, but he's one of the best, simply because he's so idiosyncratic, and I think that idiosyncrasy is what Eazy-E had as well. Who's your favourite MC from the time?
Oh, I was really torn on this one, actually, because, like, from the time, it's probably Be Real from Cypress Hill.
That's a good choice.
I mean,
it's a great choice.
I would say it's the best choice.
That's a really good choice.
It's my favourite. But, like, what got me into rap was probably Eminem, and then after that I got into Cypress Hill. Like, I think they were just maybe the cool rap groups at the time, maybe. Like, I don't like, you know, cause when I got into Cypress Hill, it was Skull and Bones, so that was when they started doing their, like, rock metal stuff, which, to be fair, wasn't particularly good. I didn't mind the songs, actually, but I went back, like, a lot, and, and I listened to, well, fuck, I might as well say my favourite album from this is Black Sunday, their album, and, yeah, it's still my favourite rap album, just bar none, not anything to do with the era or anything like that. Black Sunday, Cypress Hill is fucking good. I just think I've always liked his flow. He's so unique. Like, you can hear him, you know it's him instantly.
Yeah.
Like, because he doesn't actually rap like that, does he? They went for years with him rapping normally, less nasally.
Oh, I've not heard any of that.
No, I've never heard of any of it too, but it's true, because they weren't getting any recognition or any record deals or any, they were just going nowhere. And one day he just started, I think it was just a joke or something, he was rapping nasally, and one of the guys just went like, that sounds better, do that. And that was it. So every time you hear him rapping, he's literally putting on a voice.
He's in that same conversation that I've just mentioned with Method Man and Eazy-E, in that he has a very deliberate style, same as Old Dirty Bastard, a very deliberate style that you can tell it's him straight away.
Oh yeah, but unlike what we were saying about them, where they just sounded cool and the flow may not have been quite as good, but like with Be Real, the flow was really good.
Oh yeah,
he was incredible. Like I still don't think there's many more verse hooks I've heard that are better than any of his stuff. The only downside would be maybe is that all they do is talk about weed, but I like that. It's not, you know, like I'm cool with that. You know, like, I like
find him up, but
yeah, I think he's brilliant. On the short list of that era, I would probably have gone MCA. MCA were from Beastie Boys.
Oh, man. Are you serious? Fucking hell, that should have been your number one. That should have been your number one.
No, I'm taking it back. I'm taking it back.
MCA from the Beastie Boys.
I take it back. I was going to go Ad Rock.
Well, we mentioned the Beastie Boys. Oh, fucking hell.
Have you noticed the guys I like sound a bit nasally?
have you noticed I have restrained from talking about the Beastie Boys?
MCA is my actual least favourite Beastie Boys because I like the other two's nasally voices. I always preferred Ad Rock. I always preferred Ad Rock because he sounded a bit more aggressive.
Yeah, I think Ad Rock's my favourite of the Beastie Boys.
To be fair, it used to be MCA, but now it's Ad Rock these days.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially these days.
Well, yeah, he's still alive, isn't he?
Back to Cypress Hill. I'm just going to do a clean sweep because my favourite producer is DJ Muggs, the guy that did the first 6, I want to say, Cypress Hill albums.
And House of Pain, which is the Jump Around. And he did Jump Around, which is basically that beat from Jump Around is virtually the whole of Black Sunday. Is basically that one beat.
It's the Cypress Hill beat. And like that's his sound. Like whenever you listen to House of Pain, like that is Cypress Hill's beats. That's exactly
Like the really shrill, like every
I
bar
love it.
kind of
Absolutely love it.
high pitched sound.
They've always been weirdly
Insane in
dark,
the Brain's
though.
got that. Yeah. Their album covers are always like really quite foreboding as well.
Like even the beats they do are discordant, and to be fair, they're the only like Latin guys on this list that we've talked about so far. There's not many Hispanic rappers that we've talked about. I don't think we've talked about anything today. Like so,
They're the
so a bit
go-to
different.
Latin hip hop guys. I would say maybe the most successful of all time.
Yeah, I mean, what they did an entire album just in their native tongue, as it were, and it still sounds pretty good.
They gave Latin music a better name than Bad Bunny did, anyway.
Oh yeah, but I just generally love it. I've seen them live, although when I did see them, it was a little bit further down, so they didn't have you could tell they literally packed a laptop and a touring DJ and just went with Sendog and Be Real and just turned up on the stage, because they didn't have Eric Bobo, the drummer, and they didn't have DJ Muggs either, so definitely seemed like a we need some money sort of gig. So he went to England and watched them at Brixton Academy, but it was fantastic.
You know that Eric Bobo was one of the members of the Beastie Boys.
I do, but I think you told me that.
He fucking played like percussion with them for a long time. Oh, Dan is doing a fact check.
He was on Ill Communication and Hello Nasty as well. So yeah, that fact has been checked.
Oh, before we can move on, a strong contender for their best album, which is just behind Black Sunday, is Cypress Hill 4. That's very, very,
I haven't
very
heard
good.
that one. I've listened to Black Sunday and the one before that. I can't remember the name.
It's self-titled.
Yeah, well, I call it Cypress Hill 4 because
This brings me to my point about why early 90s hip-hop is so important. Is because it was the most perfect jump point between genres, where early 90s hip-hop became like a jump off to rock, rock fans. So what I'm basically saying is like early 90s hip hop was so important in the sense that early 90s rock fans started listening to hip hop. So when did Rage Against the Machine's first album come out?
1992, I think.
Yeah, 92. So, and also even more importantly, the Judgment Night soundtrack, which was basically rock bands and rap bands like making records together and stuff. I think the reason why early 90s hip hop is so important is because it was literally broke down the barriers between like the rock crowd and the hip hop crowd. And so you had hip hop heads and they were like, oh, I listen to hip hop, man. And you had rockers and they were like, oh, I listen to rock. And they came together. And at the point when like Rage Against the Machine came out.
Well, they started coming together like that in 1986 when Rick Rubin engineered it. Let's face it.
You could say Run DMC and fucking Aerosmith.
That was the ground zero of it.
Yeah, it was the ground zero, totally. But like, it was the early 90s when it finally became like totally crucial, where the early 90s rockers and the early 90s hip hop heads were like, we're all saying the same thing here. Ice-T was a big part of that as well, with his fucking collaboration with, the Body Count thing and, Anthrax and Public Enemy. And like,
yeah, that was a cool one.
My God, like, what a fertile period of time to be in music.
Yeah, it's unreal when you look at it.
When you look at it back, you kind of go, my God, like, what the fuck was going on there?
My favourite era of hip hop came after this. The late 90s to the early 2000s is when my favourite hip hop.
Mine too.
Because I think that in this period that you were limited to the technology and the ideas weren't quite there. They expanded on them much better in the late 90s. A lot of my favourite rappers of all time. I mean, I've got into MF Doom quite recently. He's a more late 90s rapper. He's incredible.
Yeah, well, MF Doom came from a hip hop group called KMD.
Yeah, and they were sort of early mid 90s. I haven't really listened to them.
They were part of that whole like native tongue stuff. They were like the positive. There was this little group of bands, Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul, part of it, like positive hip hop. like kind of talking about like kind of like positivity and stuff. And KMD were part of that, and they were fighting racism at that point as well. They were kind of like going like, you know, let's look at racism from a humorous point of view. And MF Doom was a member of that band.
I mean, it makes sense what Will said there. It's like, because it's like Tom said, like this era, maybe not necessarily this exact 4 years, but early 90s and late 80s, you're not wrong in saying a lot of hip hop just did sound the same. You know, like early LL Cool J, for example.
Yeah.
Like every rap song sounded like that. The exact same delivery, the exact same flow.
It's harder to find the really groundbreaking records of the period.
Exactly, because they're still like coming up with the sound essentially. And once one guy got popular off it, they all just, you know, did that. So when Whittle said the later, you know, 90s to 2000s, is when this cauldron essentially, you know, went off in different directions, but while still keeping the same attitude and stuff, you know.
The Wu-Tang Clan members going solo, all releasing solo projects. You've got Jay Dilla coming up through Slum Village. You've got Outkast hitting their peak. You've got MF Doom coming through. Early Kanye with
DJ Shadow.
DJ Shadow's introducing as well in 96.
I mean, fuck it, like Eminem wasn't that far after, you know?
Yeah, Eminem comes through all his stuff, and that leads to all the D12, G Unit, 50 Cent, all that kind of thing. So I believe that's hip-hop at its pomp, whereas the early 90s was the prototype for that.
I agree.
To get the conversation moving. My favourite MC of the time is not my favourite hip-hop MC of all time, but strictly in this period, I've got to go with Q-Tip. Q-Tip's records that he made with A Tribe Called Quest. I love his verse. I mean, as much as I love Fife Dog, rest in peace, there's something about the abstract verses to kind of use his own verbiage Q-Tip was bringing to the table. He was rapping about different things, about the business, about social issues. He was a great wordsmith. He had an ear for a hook. Even his features at the time, and features would be something that would come into late 90s hip hop a lot more, but his verses on a pop record in 1990, Q-Tip's verse on Groove Is in the Heart is brilliant. He's the perfect guy to introduce hip hop verses on a mainstream pop track. I think Q-Tip's got the flow for that, got the right timbre in his delivery. He's perfect for that. And I just think every time he does a rhyme on Low End Theory or Midnight Marauders, People's Instinctive Travels and the Passive Rhythm, he nailed it every time. And I think from this period, I can't look past Q-Tip because I think he was the full package. And for me, not quite my favourite producer. Illmatic's slightly better, maybe in terms of its importance. So I've got to give props to Q-Tip somehow. So he's going there as my favourite MC.
I agree with you there. I agree with you, Dan. I think like Q-Tip is literally one of the greatest MCs of all time. He just literally fits into whatever environment.
Well, he was on Chemical Brothers record, Galvanised. That's Q-Tip.
He was on a Beastie Boys record. You know,
Yeah.
He's just one of the greatest.
He pops up on the Illmatic as well, on One Love.
What I like about Q-Tip is that, like, if you listen to him on one of the early Tribe records and listen to him on, like, something really late, like really recent, he sounds exactly the same. He's got it's authentic as fuck, man. He's just got the same flow. He's got the same fucking kind of rhythmic cadence.
That's why Tom's going to say he doesn't like him.
No, I don't dislike him. So like I listened to Low End Theory a few times. I've tried getting into Low End Theory quite a few times.
I love
because
that record so much.
I got really into Jurassic 5 in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, Jurassic 5 is great.
And because it was like the skateboarding crew,
Yeah.
I can't skateboard, but the skateboarding crew were really into that. And Low End Theory used to get name dropped a lot. So I've tried to get into Low End Theory about 4 or 5 times. The cadence doesn't put me off. I mean, I have no problem. Like I say, the only problem I have with it is that I don't necessarily understand what he's rapping about. If you gave me a lyrics sheet, I'd probably really enjoy it.
Well, I've actually been, during my last few days, listening to just straight up hip hop all the time. I've been listening to it on Apple Music. They have the option to follow the lyrics as you're listening to it.
Yeah.
And it really improves the experience when I'm listening to hip hop.
Yeah, it would do. You can see why I have that problem, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's why my favourite rapper, who I'll come on to in a minute, it's the only thing I haven't talked about, is the reason I like my favourite rapper is because he was one of the first that I ever heard who didn't go in that slightly swung meter. But no, like, Low End Theory's great. Like, it's a really good album. And Q-Tip's on it, and he's really good on it, and everybody's really good on it. I just don't understand what they're saying. And I'm okay. And I'm okay with it. There's a band called Malajube, who are a French-Canadian band. This is the best analogy I can give you. Who, they're a brilliant band, actually. Dan, you should check them out. They're sort of indie pop. They're quite good, but their album came out a few years ago. Malajube, and they sing in French. So I can't understand what they're saying, but I enjoy it anyway.
That Elton Gun album you recommended last year.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just not that weird, is it? Yeah.
That's the thing. So I don't necessarily understand what the rappers are saying because I just can't tap. I just really struggle to tap into that meter. And my parents do as well. Like, my mum loves Outkast. She doesn't have a fucking clue what any of the songs are about, but she likes it because of the music behind it and the tone of the voices. And so I can enjoy Low End Theory for that.
That's an important point about getting into hip-hop, because I think a lot of the hip-hop albums that I first listened to, I started getting into hip-hop at sort of 2008, 2009, that kind of time. It was the kind of really accessible ones that kind of hooked me in. It wasn't until much more recently that I've started going in and examining lyrics, listening to different production techniques and listening for certain aspects of the music. That comes much later. So I think it's important to realise that when you're talking about like Q-Tip, he is so accessible.
Speaking of the reason why it's that specific swung meter that I really have a problem with, the reason why I picked my favourite MC is because he doesn't do that.
Go for it. Who are you alluding to, Thomas?
Tupac.
Tupac's great.
Never heard of him. No, I'm joking.
He's the guy that was in D-Generation X with Badass Billy Gunn and the Road Dogg Jesse James, wasn't he?
Yeah, that was the guy.
When I was working in Exeter, I really, really wanted to try to get into hip-hop because, weirdly, Martyn alluded to Pitchfork earlier. So when I was trying to be a music journalist, Pitchfork and NME were like the two big ones at the time. And Pitchfork was who everyone wanted to write for. Because Pitchfork were cool. You know, they were the ones who championed Animal Collective and stuff like that, you know. And it was they were where new music got broke. But they were massively into hip-hop at Pitchfork. And so to write for them, you had to know your hip-hop. And I decided to try and learn. And so I started with Tupac and Biggie.
It's a good starting point.
Yeah, I will always go Tupac over Biggie.
I don't. I go the opposite. But
I would say my favourite rap song of all time is probably when I first heard who Tupac was is it that song Changes? Remember that one?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if that was made after his death
it
or
was,
whatever.
yeah. I think it was released on the Greatest Hits album from about 98.
It was released after he died, yeah.
Yeah. Problem is that's my favourite rap song of all time.
It's a great shout. Undeniable banger.
Oh, 100%. I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and I still think that's his most, well, not politically, but socially aware song.
He does a lot of socially aware stuff. I mean,
Tupac was based. He was into reading Marx.
Harry Potter.
His stepdad was a Black Panther or something like that. Harry Potter.
He's one of the conscious hip-hop artists from that era, and I just really like the way he seems able to vary his flow more than other rappers. He does a lot more different stuff.
Martyn, what's your favourite album from 1990 to 94?
Fear of a Black Planet by Public Enemy.
I like that one.
I think it's my favourite of the Public Enemy albums. I listened to It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, and it's a little bit samey for me. It kind of loses its effect because it's quite a long album, but I think Fear of a Black Planet is a little bit more immediate.
I was a impressionable 16-year-old young lad, and I used to see this guy walking around like school with a Public Enemy t-shirt on. And I asked him like about it, and he was like, "Kind of, it's Public Enemy," and like, what the fuck is Public Enemy? Like, and then I got lent a album, and I didn't know about hip hop back then. I had no idea about hip hop at all. I had no idea about music really, and I put on Fear of Black Planet, and it changed my life.
For the better?
This was the first hip hop album you owned?
Yes. I was kind of like a little bit scared of the idea of punk, but this was like kind of a punk that I could get on board with because it was like a digital punk almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't so scary that like it scared me off, but it got me into that world, and I was like, what the hell is this? Now, I'm a Cornish boy, right? I'm growing up on a farm somewhere, and, in the middle of Cornwall, and...
listening to the Wurzels.
Yeah, listening to the Wurzels, exactly. Listening to cows humping and stuff. And this fucking...
Straight out of Truro.
Straight out of Truro. Straight out of Redruth. And this fucking absolute noise hit my fucking ears. Welcome to the Terror Dome. I was like, what is this? And it was like a drone that went on it went on and on and on and on. And like, just, I'd never heard music like it in my entire life. The lyrics of things that I could never understand. I didn't understand racism. I'd never come across a black person in my entire life. I could never understand a black person's like, the struggles they've been through. However, this track kind of like really thrust it into my face. It was like, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. There are people out there suffering because of the colour of their skin. And I'm like, what the fuck? And also with the background of this incredible noise going on. And it was noise. It's total fucking noise. I loved every second of it. Chuck D wasn't like going like, kind of patting you on the head, patronising in any way. It was almost like a teacher. It was almost like a lecture.
The parallels for me are similar figures such as Malcolm X and Martin Luther King in the 60s, the way they were using their words as weapons. Chuck D is very much in that mould.
I loved the intelligence of it. It wasn't just like going like white man bad, black man fucking great. It was just kind of like, we need to work together and work this out together. He was a very, very intelligent man. His lyrics are just so academic.
It was more poignant than Martin Luther King and Malcolm X by virtue of the fact that they did not have Flavor Flav going, boy, in the background every time they delivered a speech.
Yeah, there was that. You had the humour in there. And that's actually, Dan, you had a really good point there. It's that there was the humour in there.
Flavor Flav brings Public Enemy back down to earth.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of grounds the project.
That album had every part of it, the humour of it. Like 911 is a joke, is a fun kind of anthem. It's kind of funny, but it isn't. He's talking about people dying on the street because the ambulance can't meet them on the time. That's one song. That's one aspect of that album.
The Bomb Squad with the production on that album is phenomenal. I mean, they were great as a collective. They produced Ice Cube's first album. Security of the First World from It Takes a Nation of Millions was used as the basis for Justify My Love by Madonna. Had lyrics co-written with Lenny Kravitz and Ingrid Chavez, who was Prince's muse at the time. Who's your favourite producer, Martin?
DJ Premier.
DJ Premier is also Dave's production fave from the time. So a very different style to Public Enemy, though. Far more, as I say, introspective. That Gangstar album, Step in the Arena, is brilliant. And they went on to do stuff up until Guru's passing in 2010, something like that. He doesn't get as much credit as he perhaps should do. But DJ Premier is a legend of the hip-hop culture.
With any genre, no matter what sort of music you listen to the one thing that blows your mind, and then you get into it a bit more, and you learn about like the intricacies, and you learn about like the sophisticated songwriting techniques and stuff. And so like DJ Premier is my favorite producer because like Yeah, I loved all the wild noise, but the samples on Public Enemy's albums were very visceral and very, like, in your face. Bomb Squad. I wanted something a little bit more, like, kind of artistic. That's what DJ Premier gave me. Like, you can say the same thing with a simple, like, saxophone, like, loop, you know what I mean, and a decent beat. And it would still be just as powerful.
Tom has previously stated that you're not the biggest fan of DJ Premier.
No.
Get him, Tom.
He invented everything I hate in hip-hop. DJ Premier has that sort of one beat that he uses all the time, that's that sort of cruising along beat.
DJ Premier uses a lot of different beats. You're not listening to his early stuff, I think.
Musically, it just doesn't do anything for me. He's not a producer who I can connect with in any way. In the same way that I don't connect with Dre either.
It's not aimed at you.
No, it's not aimed at me. No, I just don't connect with it. The bits of hip hop that I don't like are the bits that DJ Premier influenced. And he influenced a lot of people and he's very influential, but I don't like any of it.
I have to say, I do like DJ Premier. He was involved with Illmatic.
He can be credited with introducing the more mellow jazz beats to hip-hop, which is quite massive, because that was a turning point where hip-hop was actually quite aggressive and it was quite, like, harsh. And then suddenly it was, like, actually, like, it's mellow back sort of thing. Bit like what Dre did on the West Coast, Premier did on the East Coast, really. He kind of took the beats from the streets and he kind of took it underground and was like, let's look at the jazz artists.
He wasn't the only one to do it, but he was one of the first. Al, any thoughts on either Public Enemy or anything on DJ Premier?
I only know him now. I've only heard of DJ Premier today. Apparently he's pretty good. Yeah, I like the Fear of a Black Planet. I like quite like Public Enemy. I've never done like a deep dive. I've never, there were just always other artists I listened to more, I guess. They're one of those ones that I've only heard through other people putting them on if I'm at a house party or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a group that kind of missed me a bit. Like everyone has those, people that they should listen to more of. I've heard like, the big singles and that, and I think they're really good. Yeah, what Martyn said is pretty much exactly it.
I think that's what we want people to take away from this episode, is that there's a lot of depth to the subject that we're talking about. Take away some of the recommendations you haven't got around to checking out yet. There are some deep cuts that we've all got to get round to listening to ourselves as well.
Oh yeah, my list is so big. Listen to Cypress Hill 4.
Yeah.
If you want some recommendations, I would say the Main Source debut album. I can't remember what it's called.
Their first album is called Breaking Atoms from 1991.
Nas is on that album. Also, any kind of like early Tribe, early De La Soul, early fucking Jungle Brothers.
Yeah, Ghetto Boys, Scarface.
It's such a rich mine of hip-hop.
We couldn't possibly do an all-encompassing episode on it. But there we go. There are our thoughts on the early 90s hip-hop, what we like, our personal tastes, what might pique your interests, and just a general discussion. It's been fun to get together and really get our teeth into something that may be a bit different for some of us. But what are we going to talk about next time?
I think we should do another top 10. I really enjoyed that.
I'm down for a top 10.
Top 10 pop punk songs.
Oh, yeah, Dan, I love that. Unless you don't talk about Newfound Glory or Green Day, then he's completely buggered. But
I'm going to talk about Green Day.
Does it have to be from back in the era when pop punk was big, or can it be any time?
No, it can be from any time.
Does everyone make a promise not to be a dickhead and pick the Clash and say technically it's a bit poppier or something like, you know what I mean? Well, not the Clash. But
Nothing
you know what I mean?
pre-1990.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it just stops us from getting pedantic. But technically, in the punk era,
I'm still tempted to put "I'm Not Okay" by MCR.
It's a banger.
It's a banger, isn't it?
It is an absolute.
It's an undeniable banger.
I will admit that.
So, thanks very much for listening, everybody. Make sure you stay funky.
Love
Bye.
you, bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Just stay funky. I hear it's good for you.
Bye.
All right, bye, guys.